Welcome back to Autism Unfiltered Session 3. Today we're going to look at some of the work by the amazing clinical psychologist Bo Hedgelskoff-Elven. Now, if you remember from Session 2, we were talking about cars, and we're going to stick with that comparison again today. So, back in the day, when you bought a car, you'd usually buy a Haynes manual to go with it. This manual taught you how to change the oil, replace a bulb, or fix pretty much anything on the car. Bo says our children are a bit like a Fiat Dino. If you've never heard of that car, don't worry. All you need to know is that it was a Fiat with a Ferrari engine. So, if you owned one, you actually needed two manuals, one for Fiat and one for Ferrari parts, just to figure out how to work on it. And really, that's what we do as parents in those early years. We're kind of writing our own Haynes manual at trying to understand how our child works, what helps them, what doesn't. Then, as they get older, we hand that manual over to them so they can keep learning and evolving. Imagine you take your car in for a service, and when you go to pick it up, the mechanic hands you the keys and a tin of oil and says, "You'll have to change the oil yourself." You'd probably think, "Hang on, what? Why?" And then the mechanic says, "Well, the bolt at the bottom of the engine was stuck. It didn't want to cooperate. It just wasn't motivated." Sounds ridiculous, right? Because you'd never blame the car for not cooperating. If the mechanic couldn't get the job done, that's on them, not the car. You'd even be justified in saying, "Well, I'm not paying you. You didn't fix it." But let's flip that around for a second. What if, instead of a garage, it's a school? When a teacher says, "Your child needs to learn," a Bo reminds us that actually, no child needs to learn. It's the teacher's job to make the child want to learn. Think about it. When a teacher makes something interesting, you suddenly want to know more, right? That's what good teaching does. It's not about expecting a child to automatically cooperate. It's about finding the right tools to make them want to. And if we expect them to just want to learn, that's not their problem. That's ours. Now, here's another one Bo talks about. You sometimes hear people say, "I don't care if he's got ADHD. He still needs to do what I say." But let's be honest, nobody has to do what we say. There's no law that says that. And when a child has ADHD or autism, we already know there's a chance they won't respond the way we expect. That's often how we know something's going on in the first place. It's not defiance, it's just how their brain works. All right, let's go back to our garage story. Imagine your car is due for another service, so you take it somewhere else this time. You come back, and once again, the mechanic hands you a tin of oil and says, "You'll have to change it yourself." You ask why, and he says, "Well, the bolt's 1/2 inch, and we only have metric spanners." Most modern cars use those, and we work with what the majority need. Yours needs imperial tools, and we don't have them. We only use evidence-based methods. You'd probably say, "That's ridiculous." And he'd shrug and say, "Yes, but that's science." Then he shows you his hand. It's bleeding. You ask what happened, and he says, "I tried using a 13mm spanner on a 1/2 inch bolt. Slipped and cut my hand. So now I can't give you your car. We've got a zero tolerance policy, and I've called the police." At that point, you'd be fuming, right? Because he used the wrong tool, hurt himself, and somehow blamed your car. Now, obviously, that story's made up. But it's a perfect metaphor for what happens in some schools. Teachers use methods that work for most kids and expect the rest to just fit in. And when it doesn't work, they blame the child, not the tools or the approach. Here's another example. Have you ever had a parking ticket? When that happens, you can think about it in two ways. Option 1, I parked in the wrong place. My bad. I won't do that again, and that's how we learn. Option 2. That traffic warden's an idiot. If you think that way, you'll keep parking in the same spot, keep getting tickets, and never learn anything. And that's exactly what happens in schools that have zero tolerance policies. They keep using the same ineffective methods, get the same results, and act shocked every time. As Einstein said, the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And honestly, that doesn't just apply to schools. It applies to us as parents too. We need to find the tools that actually work for our kids, and we need to be honest enough to ask ourselves, are my current tools working? And if they're not, well, it's time to change the tools, not the child. Thanks for joining me for Session 3 of Autism Unfiltered. Take a moment to think about your own Haynes manual, the one you're writing for your child. And remember, you've got the power to keep adding new pages as you learn what really works. See you in the next session.